overall, over the 4 years, the team, the squad that went from the bottom of the league to win the League Cup and the Champions League is needing totally revamped. And I think Joe Linton will be remembered as possibly the most important player, because I'm going to get this down for the next couple of weeks. But I think when he doesn't play, we lose games like that where they just walk through us. When he plays, all right, we don't always play well in those games, but we win them. And it's because of that sort of thing. He'll do fouls. He'll take people out in hard tackles, and he'll just generally put himself about aggressively in a way that I think the opposition midfield's just terrified the whole game. Like, they're getting the ball and they're thinking, I'd better get rid of this before Joe Linton collywobbles us. So I think it's maybe the most important player. And Tonali, Bruno, Miley have all got a bit of that. But we need an absolute beast, and that is not an easy thing to replace.
Yeah.
There was a moment yesterday when Aja picked up the ball, like Aja being their central defender, and just ran the entire length.
He did, yeah.
And no one challenged him. And you've got to think as well, that if he'd crossed Joe Linton's path at any point, he was getting upended, stamped on.
There was a good foul coming. A really good foul. Yeah. Yeah.
Possibly clotheslined. But
Saudi do love the wrestling.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's been a couple of points right here whereby there is players will need to move on, like Trippier. And you can make your own list of how extensive that is. There is players that look like they're angling to move on. We've mentioned Tonali. Livermento's name keeps coming up. Would you sell Livermento to City if they put 75 million down, given his injury record?
Yes.
I would too. I would say, he ain't no Lewis Hall. And so if you sold both of them, in addition to the leftovers of the ASIC money, in addition to any increased income, and in addition to what you make from offloading peripheral players, could have a canny war chest this summer. The question is, does Eddie Howe get that? Or do you start with a new manager and build a new team up from scratch? So what I'm going to do is we'll keep swinging around to this, but I'm going to ask you both, what's your answer to that right now? Howe, given a lot of money, although it should be Ross Wilson picking targets starting from now, but Howe given the new team, or do you get a new manager in?
Hutch, you go first.
I think with what is David Hopkinson, isn't it? What he said the other day on TalkSport, you've got 5 years before you realistically want to compete for the Premier League and in the Champions League regularly.
He said win the Premier League.
Win the Premier League. I don't think Eddie Howe is capable of that. Every single time we've had Champions League football, he's run out of ideas up until the point where he's got weeks to develop something new. He can't turn it on a dime. And he's proving it this season. Whereas I know Simon's going to disagree with me.
So is your response basically that you would get a new manager this summer?
I think we need someone who is capable of doing who is capable of playing in both has proven himself capable of playing in both managing a team in European and domestic competition. And I'm sorry, but that's not Eddie Howe. I love the man, but it's not him.
Simon?
Keep him. When we've watched us at the top of our game with the squads that we've had, we've beasted teams. Like when we've been like pressing teams, rolling over them, when we've had a Joe Linton and a consistent back four, we were nearly in and amongst the top of this league. And if you look at the quality of those teams now, the Man City's, Liverpool's, if we had the Howe system with all the right parts to it and a squad that can play on many different fronts all at the same time, I think you've got to give him a shot, because I think he has got it in him. and I think he's worth a go.
It's kind of a catch-22 though, based on what Hutch said, because it looks a bit unlikely that we'll be in Europe next year. I know that's still a bit of water to flow under the bridge, but you'd think if you kept him, he would have a good season next year. But then you might just be kicking the can down the road with the problem. And when we do go back into whichever European competition, could we be back to having a season like this? And do you just meet the problem head on now?
So, well, is that the problem then? Because if you got another manager in now, you could have, I don't know, the best manager in the world in. He's going to have the same problem.
I think the issue is the way he plays is intensity. Intensity is our identity, where it's all about the high press and things like that. And without a plan B, where you don't need to do that, you can't play Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday. So you need a different plan to conserve energy. And I think when he brought in the David Bunce, is it the conditioning guy? He said you can't just hear it everybody twice a week because you'll get the injuries you had last season. And he's just tried to do sort of like a halfway thing between something and nothing. And on occasion, you see like, oh, you'll come out of a game and go, oh, we pressed brilliant there. I mean,
Yeah.
PSV, we beat them in half an hour by pressing. And but he's picking and choosing. And I think he hasn't learned yet to find a way of doing it other than that. And that's the frustrating part for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that was a problem against Brentford yesterday because we didn't hound them. We didn't go after them. Whether we had the players to do it or not, the intensity wasn't there at all.
James Bunce, thanks, Lynn. I think I said Frank, didn't I? Is that the boxing commentator? But yeah, I think one in each camp there. What I'll do is I'll kind of revisit it because I think there's a couple of things to look at. First of all, I wouldn't be doing a knee jerk and getting rid of Eddie Howe because there's no obvious caretaker to who I could see getting a reaction, who I could see mixing it in the last 16 in the Champions League. And I very, very much doubt they've laid the groundwork to get a successor in. Nearly every time, you're better off picking a successor in the summer. So I'd say there's 2 points to look at. Number one, give him the FA Cup. If we can get past Villa, which I wouldn't back us to, although Villa have kind of crumbled a bit since they beat us the other week. But if we can get past Villa, that trophy's still on the table, and see if we can galvanise it in the latter part of the season in the way we did the League Cup when we had a bit of a fall away last season. And then if we do go out with Villa, the next big checkpoint is the derby next month. So if we are out the FA Cup, if we are further down the league, because we've got to go to Man City and Chelsea before then, Sunderland are going to turn up knowing they can create an absolute diarrhea storm for us. And at the minute, they're a tough team to beat. They're not brilliant away from home. A lot of their points coming to Stadium of Light. But I think they would be so up for that game. And if this, bearing in mind, I think we'll have just played our second leg against Karabakh. If this fatigued-looking version of us turns up, I think that derby could go badly, and that could be it. And if it goes that way, I think that's a fair month. I think we owe Eddie that month to try and sort it out. But I'd just be looking to kind of change things because the season's been a disaster with some reason, but not really enough. So I think we'll talk about it, Next week we'll play Villa. We'll see how we feel about that after the game. And after the draw, if applicable. But
I would just like to say, right, I am not diehard Howe out. However,
no,
with the way that things are going at the present moment in time in the summer, I would be looking to replace him.
and that's the way to be as well, because I think some people are so diehard Howe out, they're practically wanting Newcastle to have terrible defeats so they can get on the internet and say, I told you so. It's like they're more Howe out than they are Newcastle fans. So I think a balanced view of saying there's things that aren't really working. But still, maintaining that, you'd hope it could work, and you'd want the positives to come to the fore. I think that's the way to be, but you're just being rational. So we'll see, Simon, if you stick that way for the rest of the season.
Or if you remain totally irrational, Simon. Right?
Well, it's just his view. That's it.
Yeah,
Plenty of different viewpoints. Before we go into midweek, I'm just gonna start a little bit of comparison stuff. Because after all, 'tis what we do. I'm going to add a picture.
Oh yes.
Now, the picture's obviously, I've got to be wary of this now that we're on the radio. The picture is relevant to anyone watching on YouTube, and to anyone else, it's fundamentally not. So I'll put it in there, and it's quite hard to see anyway. But this is, I think, a very interesting comparison. It's a double comparison. So we normally do games, we normally do times. This is whole entire season comparisons. So what I'd say to everybody, if you remember, there's 2 seasons that remind me an awful lot of this one. The first one is 1997 to 98, when Kenny Dalglish was manager. Now, looking across that season, it was very much cup influenced. So we got the FA Cup final. We were in the Champions League and played in the group stage. The year we beat Barcelona, but we went out coming third in the group. And we got the quarter-final of the League Cup. However, in the Premier League, and bear in mind, we'd only ever come top 6 in the Premier League era by this point. In the Premier League, we came 13th. I distinctly remember going into the last home game of the season with a relegation threat hanging over our head. But we came fairly comfortable. I think we beat Chelsea. And look at that record. Won 11, drew 11, lost 16. We only had 3 away wins all season. And we lost 5 home games, some of them pretty disappointingly. So what happened there was 2 things that I think are relevant to today.
Live on YouTube,
on the website,
on DAB, and on your smart speaker. NUFC Talk Radio.